Hello and welcome to Founder Institute's Rise and Scale Bermuda Business Accelerator. Tonight is our pitch mastery. We're really excited about what's happening tonight because we have one of the best people in AI on planet Earth, who's going to teach you how to create an AI startup in one night, basically. And then after that, we have another special surprise. But we're first going to get into Ruben. I'll hand it right over. It needs no introduction because I think as soon as you understand what he's been doing, you'll get a better understanding of just how cool it all is. Um, but to put it in perspective, he was one of the first testers for ChatGPT 4. He has one of the most popular Reddit subreddits in on Reddit online, and he was doing some amazing things in AI. Without further ado, Ruben.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm excited to give you guys a crash course on how to build things quickly with AI. Let me share my screen here, but while I'm getting going, the fundamental question is, what if you could build your entire startup by just asking? And that's the what you should take away from this presentation. There's a number of tactics and techniques. So what I'm going to start is going to give you a bit of a crash course in what I call agentic engineering. And you might hear that thrown around a lot. I'm not going to spend too much time telling you about me, but I got to tell you a little bit just to know who you're talking or who you're listening to in this case. I'm a kind of reformed cloud computing person, right? I started my career doing a lot in the cloud. I was sort of notable for helping launch Amazon's AWS service in 2006 as one of their first outside advisors. So for me, the current sort of world we're in is kind of like the early days of cloud computing, but replacing the I in infrastructure with an I in intelligence. So over the last 20 years or so, as I built up my own startup and started mentoring, I've been mentoring with Founder Institute, I think since 2016, so about 8 years at this point. I also helped launch the Techstars mentoring program back in 2009. So between the two, I lost track of how much we've raised the companies I've mentored. About 3 years ago was about 500 million. So I've done a lot, about 20 cohorts between the two over the last 15 years or so. So I'm a consultant. I work with a variety of different companies. My companies are big, they're small, mostly big. So I have this sort of a whole approach that I've come up to with sort of how to implement AI within the structure of a larger organization. My clients include Ernst & Young, Microsoft, AWS, the U.S. federal government, Northwestern, Kellogg, where I'm adjunct in their MBAI program, Rotman School of Management in Toronto, where I'm also adjunct in their MBAI program. A lot of what I'm doing right now is what I do with the universities as well. My job is essentially to show sort of a lot of, in the case of business students, how to sort of navigate the new world of business where AI gives you essentially a step into infinite knowledge. So now you have the ability to tap into these systems that literally can answer any question you can possibly fathom. Anything you possibly want to do is there at your disposal. The question is really asking the right questions. So a lot of what we're going to do right now is just give you a really quick sort of crash course in the basics of agentic engineering, some prompt engineering, and then I'm going to jump in and show you how to build some cool stuff. Like for example, uh, well, I'll give you a little example. This is an election system, a fully functional election system that can monitor every election in the world in real time. I built this in 1 hour. This is the sort of thing that I'll show you how to do hopefully by the end of our little demonstration. So imagine that you could build really complicated things in really short periods of time. And that's what we're going to try to do here. All right, that was like my project this week, and I built something last week too, and the week before that. Anyway. Okay, so a lot of times you're going to hear about AI, you're going to hear about prompt engineering. Prompt engineering is the idea of being able to sort of ask the right series of questions and get the right response from the language models. For me, it's more than just asking the right questions and getting a response. That's a very sort of, one-to-one sort of relationship. I ask it, it tells me, but it doesn't look out for me. It's not proactive, it's not responsive, it's not working on my behalf in much the same way an employee might work or a particular job might work in terms of what you need to do. That's where agentics comes into play. Agentics is based on the concepts of agency. the ability for applications to act autonomously with little to no humans involved in the sort of process. So once you've learned how to build these agents, you can start looking at your startup from the lens of, well, if I was to hire a person, what would that person do? And if I was to create an agent that does the job of that person, how would I sort of instrument that to work in the way that a person would? More, looking beyond that, if I was to hire 10 people or 1,000 people or more, what would those jobs be? So a lot of what I'm doing is I'm not looking to replace people, and often people get really caught up on that. And what I'm looking to do is augment you as a founder to be more efficient, more effective, and more capable. So the key here is to create these systems that sort of work alongside you, understand the way that you think, understand the things that you're good at, and more importantly, understand the things that you're not so good at, so it can fill those holes and have a sort of superpower of sorts that allows you to be more efficient, effective, and fast in the things that you're going to do. So Agentics, again, there's four primary things you're going to have to remember. It's proactive. It can anticipate changes. It's always looking out for you. It's autonomous. It operates independently. Once deployed, these systems should operate in a way much like a good employee might operate, but they're operating 24/7 at a fraction of the cost. They're collaborative. They can collaborate with you, but they can also collaborate with each other. So they have the ability to have a kind of social construct that allows them to interact with each other in a targeted way, meaning they're looking at a broad goal, make you rich, make you successful, make you a website, whatever it needs to be, and then they're collaborating to achieve that goal. All right. So the next part is what I've defined as a pack hierarchy. And some you might be familiar with the idea of autonomous cars. This is an analogy for autonomous cars, where at the bottom you have a car you have to drive yourself. At the very top, you've got a car you get into and it just magically takes you to wherever you need to go. We have a similar sort of hierarchy in the software world. Right now, we're moving at a kind of rapid speed. What we're seeing is the evolution of this technology go from basically non-existent 2.5 years ago to basically among the smartest people on the planet in terms of IQ and capability. And that's just in the last 6 months. It's gone from relatively smart to basically the smartest person on the planet. What does the next 6 months hold? We're only going to scratch the surface here in a moment. But basically, long story short, is anything you ask of it can pretty much be created if you're asking the right questions. So you have to understand how to ask those right questions. So by understanding that the system is proactive, you need to be able to find things like the rules, the goals it needs to achieve, how it needs to adapt to problems. So you're defining sort of these specifications to give it the ability to understand what's important to what it needs to achieve and what's important to you. The next big area to look at is autonomy. Like how does it actually adapt and change based on those rules, right? If it needs to adapt and learn that something works better than something else, an A/B test, for example. Maybe I need version 1 of my site and version 2, and I test which one has a better conversion rate. The system is able to learn from that, adapt, and then provide potentially different versions of the software or website to your customers and learn which is the one that's going to create the most revenue traction in the shortest period of time. Again, the collaborative aspects. I'm getting information. Where and how am I getting that information into these systems? It could be scraping the web. It could be APIs. It could be data sources of various. It could be emails. People. Any number of places where it gets the information and provides a mechanism for collaborating around that information. The next and probably the most important part is the idea of target, the target for what it needs to do. How does it need to do it? What's it focused on doing, and what's important for achieving those sort of outcomes. So these are all the broad sort of things you're going to think about when sort of implementing some of these systems. Now, I'm going fast. We don't have a lot of time today, so I'm going to skip right to the prompt engineering part, which is going to take us to one of the more important parts of building an application, and that's the structure of your prompts. So some of you probably are familiar with this, but I'm going to give you the 101 just to get everyone up to speed. So prompt engineering is a process of refining the inputs. It's basically the way that you're interacting with these language models, and it involves the structure of how you ask your question. Long story short, if you ask a bad question, you'll get a bad response. Garbage in, garbage out. So the key is to make sure you're asking the questions in a way that relates to the information that you need, which breaks down into essentially three core concepts: logic and reasoning. That's the ability to craft these prompts that create logical steps, similar to the hierarchy I just showed you. The ability to integrate various forms of data. So remember, when working with language models, you're not always just working through like a chat-based interface, typing in questions. You're often working through automated flows and and different types of workflows that define how and what needs to be done. Now, that can also break down into a structured or unstructured approach to defining those prompts. An unstructured approach would be literally what I'm doing right now. I'm just stuff's coming out of my mouth. It's going from my brain to my mouth to you. It's unstructured. I'm following a general structure of my PowerPoint here, but beyond that, there's not a lot of structure. Now, a structured approach uses a kind of markup or a very specific hierarchy or series of actions, and it's telling it how to think. And that's for a lot of things, especially the latest models you'll hear about, for example, from OpenAI, which is referred to as O1, that use a reflective model. That means that it has this internal thought pattern. So to help sort of take advantage of these kind of reflective systems that are able to sort of have logic and reason, you need to tell it how to think. So to get the most out of some of the most modern models, you're basically saying, think in this structure, work in this way. And that could be sequential, do this before that, or it could be concurrent, do these things while we figure it out, and then come together and give me the solution at the end. So there's lots of ways to sort of form the sort of thinking patterns of these models to really amplify them. Another thing I want to point out, and I find this fact particularly intriguing. They did a study recently on, sort of AI and how it sort of amplifies, the user's capability. And on average, most people in the world have an IQ of about 100 to 110. That's the average sort of capability of a normal human being. When when put with a GPT-4 model, which is already several months old, the average individual's IQ raised from 100 to 110 to 150, making that individual among the smartest people to ever live. And that's on a model that's 6 months old. And what they look at is, well, what does it do for people that are actually capable and know how to use these models? What they saw was these models weren't just incrementally making people more intelligent and capable. We were seeing increases of 1,000 to 100,000 times the increase in capability when used correctly. So that means there isn't an IQ score even big enough to even define what that means. It means it's people that have, I don't know what you want to call it, like superpowers, and that's what you're looking to do here. So to understand how to do that, how to give yourself sort of, I don't want to say godlike, intellectual superpowers, but basically you have to understand how to modify and use these prompts. And there are three basic parts to any prompting system when you're building these things. First, a system prompt. A system prompt's like the central system that says, here's why I exist. If you're, reading sci-fi, it's the 4 laws of robotics. Don't do any harm, make me super successful, make me breakfast, whatever it needs to be. The assistant is the response that you see. Now, when we're looking at the response of an assistant, you can use it in two different ways. You can treat it like a memory. These are all the things you need to remember and think of. Like, so you're basically inserting sort of false memories into the language model. And then there's the user input. This is like the interaction between you and I, or a system or an agent that says, here's what I need and here's why I need it. So between the three, that creates any basic prompting system. For the most part, you're going to be focused likely on the assistant and the user, since unless you're building your own platform, the system prompts are generally hidden from view, and that's what kind of makes ChatGPT and other language models tick. Now, the next big part of the equation is something referred to as retrieval augmented generation. Retrieval augmented generation is the ability to take those prompts and insert information that's relevant to the query being made. That means if I'm asking about the weather in a certain country, well, it needs to go look up the weather based on the intent or the information given. So I might say, what's the weather in Toronto, Canada right now? Well, the system knows that I've just said Toronto and Canada and weather, right? So it can make an external lookup for that information, bring it back into the prompt, and give me a nice summary of, well, the weather is actually pretty nice for September. It isn't the Caribbean, sort of thing. All right. So you've got these three parts. You can retrieve, and that allows you to get information from various sources. You can augment, you can adjust, and you can create sort of that message and structure. Sound like a 5-year-old, sound like a genius, give me an image, give me a video, whatever it needs to be. And then the last step is the sort of generation. It's the output. You ask for an image, therefore you're getting an image or video or text, right? So it's the output in essence. So in this particular hierarchy, you'll see that as you go up, things are more complex and you get more power. The things at the bottom are a lot more like a chat GPT. Now, the next part is how you create these prompts. Zero shot are the kind of the prompts you generally start with when you first try a chat system. Tell me about that guitar on the wall. Well, I didn't give it any context. Like maybe I gave it an image. If I gave it an image, it would know that it's brown, it's an ovation, it's on my wall, but it doesn't know anything beyond what I told it, right? So it's very limited in its ability to reason and understand because I haven't given it a lot. Certain questions, especially ones that are creative, work well for that. Like, give me a nice presentation to give to the Founders Institute presentation tonight that I'm giving, in 50 words, and that's enough, right? I guess that's a one-shot prompt, but a one-shot prompt gives you a specific definition, right? It gives you more information than just something very simple and easy. So you're adding, the ability to say, translate my language or do something, but I'm not giving it any examples of what that translation might look like. If I'm asking for it to go from English to French, my cat is black, then I might give it the example of what that is in French, and that would be a few shot prompt. So the more information you can provide, the better it performs, and the least likely it is to make stuff up or hallucinate. So by adding information in the retrieval augmented process, you're putting it in, and now it's be able to understand. Hopefully you understand. All right, so I'm going to jump in quick. Just give you a quick example of all three, and then we'll get to building some stuff. All right. So as I said before, this is a zero shot. Translate the following English sentence into French. The cat is sitting on the mat. I gave it no other example. It's going to translate. It's probably going to do a pretty good job. The next one is translate the following sentence to French. Example, the dog is playing in the garden. Le chien joue dans le jardin. Translate the cat is on the mat. So in this particular example, I gave it both the question, the dog is playing in the garden. I gave it the example of what the translation is, what it should look like, and I actually translated it, right? So it's getting examples of what it needs to do. The next and the most powerful uses multiple steps, multiple examples. So in this case, determine the sentiment of the following statement. Example one, this movie was thrilling and exciting. It's positive. Example two, the meal was unappetizing and bland. Well, that's kind of negative. And number three, I am indifferent about the new policy, neutral, right? So now it's got a basis to understand anything you want to ask of it. So analyze the concert was an unforgettable experience. Well, in this case, if it's true, I would guess the answer would be positive. And if it's something other than that, you're going to have to adjust your prompt. Start with things that are easy to understand and relatable in what you're doing. The next is structured versus unstructured prompt, which I mentioned earlier. Clearly define your prompt structure, and you'll get a lot more power out of these systems. If you want unstructured, these are open-ended, allowing for creative things. I don't necessarily want to tell you what I want. I want you to suggest things, give me ideas, give me things that I never thought of. So for ideating or coming up with solutions or negotiating and other things that are more free-form in nature, you probably want to have an unstructured prompt. But if you're building a business plan, you're building a specification, you're building an application, you're going to market, you're doing fundraising, you want structure. You want the ability to go through a series of things with a logical conclusion and outcome. Your outcome for you is raise some funding, be successful, be rich, and I don't know, lay on a beach someday, right? Those are things that you're working towards. So you want that sort of structure of your system to follow that. So just as a brief, and I'm going to give you guys a copy of this at the end, so you can refer to it later. And there's a video, and I'm going super fast, so there's a lot of information to take in. Hopefully you'll watch this in slow motion later. All right, so just to give you a quick update, structured versus unstructured. Structured is great for standardization, errors, scalability, documentation. And if you're looking for things like unstructured, you want creativity, you want flexibility, you want ease of communication. That's things to keep in mind here. So an unstructured prompt in this case, would look like, very, very simple, doesn't have a lot of detail. In this case, this is an enterprise bot designed to do something, a CIAOs, and so this is my prompt. It's very sort of just coming out as I might type it or say it, right? It's not a lot of structure to it. Now, the next prompt, this uses a markup. It says name equals description, implementation, features, chain of thought steps, how it's going to reason, how it's going to think. Very organized and structured, right? So it knows exactly the things it needs to do and how it needs to do it, right? So, but just a lot more guidance. And this is important because in a minute, I'm going to show you how to build stuff. And the structured prompt is the critical component to how you're going to actually build this stuff quickly. All right, so what I'm going to do now, because we don't have a lot of time today, and I've already blasted through, I think, 20 minutes or so, I'm going to go and give you a quick little demonstration of some of these applications that allow you to build this stuff quickly. So what I'll do quick first, I'm going to show you a couple apps. One is this tool called vo.dev, and another is a tool called GPT Engineer. GPT Engineer is really powerful as well. It's a bit easier to use, but they're both kind of similar in how they work. But basically, you can describe things that you want to build, and you can show examples, and you can provide a sort of specification. Like when I show you something, I built a Hacker League website just for the hell of it to show, that it can be done. It's got, challenges, it's got leaderboards, it's got all this stuff. Now, keep in mind, this was built in an hour. So yeah, it's got backends, it's got all this stuff going for it. It's got actually 30,000 lines of code, 100% original. It's got, I think this version, it's got an admin panel. I can track, community, I can assist. And I literally just built this just to show how to build something. Like it's just built for the hell of it. It's got a, judiciary system to judge, any sort of hacking competitions, all kinds of stuff. Now, the way that I was able to build this so quickly, in this case, I used GPT Engineer, and I created a prompt that guided me through the process. So in this case, let's go build something. So one of the most powerful systems I use for starting any specification is actually Perplexity. Perplexity is amazing for a couple things. It's amazing at research, and it's amazing at implementation. So first thing you're going to see here is you've got different options in Perplexity. You've got the ability to search the web. You can look at academic papers. You can create complex math and math equations, writing, video. It can literally watch YouTube videos and give me everything there is to know about that YouTube video. So it's really good at gathering information. And it's also got a sort of complex reasoning system similar to the new O1 model from the guys at ChatGPT. But what we're going to start with is we're going to dream something up. So let me pause for a moment. Anyone have any ideas on some random thing they want to build? Doesn't matter how crazy or complicated, just something.
Maybe like the surf patterns in Bermuda.
Sure.
Or Zane, you go ahead. No,
Okay.
Zane,
Okay.
pick one, pick one.
Yeah, I was just saying maybe like an impact reporting system. I don't know how
Oh,
complex that'd be.
sure. I love complex. Oh, if you're wondering how complex you can get, I'm jumping around here a little bit, guys. But let me show you something. I was sitting watching Lord of the Rings last night on TV, and I'm like, oh, what's the most complicated thing I could possibly make while watching Lord of the Rings? I created a decentralized peer-to-peer next generation content delivery system. Like it's like blockchain and I don't know, all kinds of crazy stuff. This is several thousand lines of code, and it did it while I was watching, Lord of the Rings. Nothing's too complicated. The thing to just one thing to before I start building this, the ease of which we can create anything we can imagine is basically means that there is no defensibility in technology. Within the next year, probably two, anything that you see, anyone's product that you can interact with can be copied by just asking. So as you build these things, you're going to have to keep in mind that you're slightly ahead of the curve because I'm giving you sort of the magic beans today, but over the next few years, everyone else is going to catch up. So your opportunity right now is the fact that you're a few months ahead of the rest of the world. And what does that world look like in 6 months when everyone can do that, what you do? Your differentiation is going to be everything other than the technology. It's going to be the relationships you build, the revenue you have, the momentum you gain, and those things that AI can't recreate. So when you're doing this, just keep that in mind. Just because you have the ability now and most people don't know about it, doesn't mean that they won't at some point in the future. All right. So there was a comment about creating an impact, and we say, is this like social impact? Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's call it uh, uh, create a detailed social impact monitoring and analysis system that allows for detailed review, search terms. I'm just making this up. AI integration and data sources and other uh, settings, login, all the things you would think of, okay? And now I'm going to say, and I'm just going to fix my typo. I'm going to say, give me both the technical and functional specification, user flows, UI items, database schema, I don't know, and implementation guide. And I'm doing this quick just because we don't have a lot of time, right? I'm just to show you the general idea. Now, in this case, if I want to do research first, I might use the academic feature and say, give me the most cutting edge approach to impact, impact monitoring and research. And then based on that, I might go ahead and create the next step. But in this case, I'm just going to do it all at once. So this is more of a, let's say one, not a zero shot, but more of a one shot prompt kind of approach. All right, so now I'm going to do that. So what's cool about Perplexity, it's searching the internet. You see existing impact. So let's just look at what it's looking at. Existing impact monitoring systems, social impact analysis tools. So I could literally say copy someone else's tool if I wanted to. AI integration. All right, okay. So now it came up with a specification: React, Node.js, Express. Right, it's suggesting that. So I'm going to make a couple alterations quick because I know where I'm going to implement it, and I'm going to stop it. All right, so I'm going to stop. And this is something I do frequently, is that I stop in the middle of it. I think I'm going to try to use GPT Engineer, and I know that GPT Engineer has a few requirements. Oh, it's still doing its thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit it quick, and I'm going to say use Vite.js, which is the sort of core JavaScript system that GPT Engineer uses. Remember that. The next thing I want to use, in this case, I don't want it to use a database. So I'm going to say use user storage. User storage is really good for first step in any application. It basically uses the storage in your browser or on your computer. You don't have to worry about creating a database, and you can add that later, right? So when you're first starting, you kind of want it to work with sort of fake information, right? User storage for data and APIs. All right, and then I'm going to say, and next thing you want to do is probably use something called Tailwinds. Tailwinds is a design framework that allows you to quickly create kind of templatable systems. Remember that, and when you watch this again and we try to recreate this later, those are going to be important for you to remember. So I'm actually gonna pop that in the chat so you have that quickly. There you go. All right, so now it's going to give me this again, but this time it's a little more detailed, so it's including Tailwind and other things. All right, so here's a detailed specification. It's got a user login system. It's got a dashboard. It's got data source management, search and monitoring, AI-powered analysis, reporting, settings, technical specifications, and what I outlined. All right, it's got a front end. It's got some. So I'm not even going to bother reading through this. I'm just going to try to get to the end of it because just to go fast here. All right, it's giving me a database structure. The database structure is useful because it kind of tells how the information needs to work. All right. Hopefully it's almost done. All right, I'm going to start with just the beginning. So in this case, I'm not going to include the database related information because I don't really want that or need that just yet. I'm more concerned about kind of how it works. So I'm going to go here, core features. Oops, I guess I got to copy that again. All right, copy that. Now I'm going to go into GPT Engineer quick. All right. Now, one last thing that I can do also, which is kind of interesting. Now, I'm lazy. I could design it if I wanted to, or I could go to Dribble. So I'm going to go Dribble, and I'm going to just find a screenshot or something of something I like. So in this case, let's just find a dashboard. These are cool designs people do, and so you can kind of borrow them a little bit. So in this case, I'm just going to find a site that looks kind of like what I like. All right, this looks like a decent little dashboard. All right, let's just take a screenshot of that. All right, so I'm grabbing this, and this gives it more guidance. Now, again, this could literally be a competitor's website. Like anything you can see, you can copy and build. It's kind of crazy, to be honest. All right, so I'm going to go back here, and now I'm going to copy that in, paste that in there. Just make sure it's there. I think it is. Yeah, there we go. So I'm pasting that in there. There's some options here around configuration. I just go with this option. This is default. The other option is more experimental. It uses a TypeScript versus JavaScript. Use the JavaScript. It's good enough. All right. So, and I'm just gonna add one last thing. Implement responsive UI based on attached image. Now, keep in mind, I didn't read it. I didn't really do much. I'm just literally making this up as I go, just for your sake, right? This is like, the magician or something. All right, so I'm putting that in there. Now it's taking the specification. Now it's creating the code in real time. Now, sometimes the first version of these things throw an error, but we'll deal with that as it happens. Now it's creating the dashboard page. It's creating a sidebar page. It's creating a header. So it's creating all the things that I kind of blindly pasted in here. It's creating a main components page with some fake data. It's creating, well, it keeps creating. And we added a lot of stuff. Looks like it's product review. We'll see what we end up with. Again, the more time you spend with the specification, the better product you're going to get. So if I was legitimately doing this for a purpose, like the example I showed you earlier, I would have spent like a lot more time defining what and how and why those elements are important. Now it's spawning up an instance of that. It creates 7 files. First version often has an error, so fingers crossed. Whoa, okay, it worked in the first try, even better. All right, let's take a look at this on oh, preview didn't work for some reason. Let's try with preview one more time. No, it's having some problem there. I don't know. I'm moving too quick. But so let's check. Let's just keep it in here for now. So it looks like there's some problems with the responsive version, but given it was the first thing, not too bad. I've got a dashboard. It's got the general look. It's missing some of the images are broken. But that's okay. The nav doesn't work. So the first thing I'm going to say is make the UI work in both desktop and mobile responsive view. Keep this desktop version as is. I think the desktop version is generally okay. I just want to make sure that the mobile version is good. I can then fix up images. You're basically just describing the thing that you want to create. And again, there is literally nothing you can't create with this, which is the part that's just mind-boggling. If I
Well,
want
and
to,
just to be clear, if you were using a dev shop, this is like 1 to 3 months and like tens of thousands of dollars.
at least. And this is what I created in 7 minutes. So imagine what 7 hours or 7 days looks like, right? So there is literally nothing you can't do. So if you can think it, if you can describe it, if you can show it in a structured way, you can build it. And that's really important to understand. Now, all right, so I'm just doing a quick update here. I know we're almost out of time here, but so you can see here that it's implemented some changes. It's made a few things here and there. It's cleaning things up. Let's see if it fixed up the mobile. So now mobile's working better. Good. It still needs a little bit of fixes. It's got a menu now that works. It's got an upgrade to Pro. We're step by step VO dev made by yourself. You can go in here and you can create different applications. You can see that they've got a similar approach. Now, I like this one for like building more modular components. Like you can see that people are building like little pieces to do like how much does it cost or whatever, where the GPT dev does full applications a little better. So depending on what you're trying to do, you can use different systems for different problems. So this one in this case, I didn't build this, but someone built some kind of weather thing, right? To someone's point about the I think it was the surf patterns and stuff like that. I actually did a climate change analysis system the other day just because I was curious what the difference between the temperature and the environment was when I was born and when what it's like now based on the location in which I am. And I built that in 10 minutes. Let me see if I can find that for you, just to show you what a 10-minute project looks like when you kind of know what you're doing. I built so much stuff. It's hard to remember half this stuff. There's a voice system. Yeah, here it is. A historical a historical weather app, and this actually integrates with various real-time data sources, including the real weather updates from various weather APIs that don't cost any money, all kinds of stuff. Here, let's see here. It takes a second to spin up. So this is basically creating a version that you can play with. All right, let's go to mobile. You can see I've got my little menu. I can see historical weather, temperature trends, participation, stuff like that. So I can go to historical weather, loading the information. You can see that it's automatically detected my location in Toronto because I have an automatic detection capability. It's now knows that, did a lookup and said, well, the temperature's changed on, from 90, it's gone up on this date. I'm only looking at the today's date, and every year since 1951, and the average temp date for September, I think whatever you September 26 or something, whatever the date is, I lost even track of the date. But today's date, and this is like a 10-minute project. I got little charts, I've got different sections. So again, anything you can possibly imagine, you can do in literally a moment's notice, and that's kind of crazy. I'm not gonna lie. Um,
It's incredible.
right? It is crazy. I'm like, I feel like I'm living in the future or something.
That
It's
would
like,
normally be like a whole year project.
oh, and you should see what like 2 or 3 hour projects look like. Like it's bonkers. Like I was showing you this electro thing just quickly. This was 1 hour. And let's start just this from the beginning. So I can look up every election in every place in the world happening right now in real time. I can define by North America. I can define by election type. I can define by demographic, political factor. I can look at external factors, media influence. I can get real-time reporting on that. I can then break that down based on
Like if
prediction.
you put Bermuda in the top left there, will work.
Yeah, so let's go back here for a moment. I don't think I have the API on at the moment. I'll have to redeploy it. I'm cheap. What can I say?
Yeah, okay.
But you guys, this is open source. I can throw a link to my GitHub for those who want to actually try it after the fact. This is my latest little hack this week. Um, but why I'm showing you this one is because it's not because I want to manipulate or understand elections, which is kind of interesting. But what I want to show you is the fact that you can integrate data and do analysis, and that's the key to pretty much like 80% of businesses at this point is the ability to get information, define where and what it is, and then make it understandable for some purpose, right? Whether that's doing your taxes or something we haven't even dreamt of yet. In this case, I did it to sort of just illustrate the ability to analyze complex things and make predictions based on it. So back to the idea of agentics, each one of the things that I'm analyzing within this system is an agent, right? So the agent acts as a kind of pseudo person. In this case, your job is to monitor an election happening in a certain city at a certain place at a certain time and tell me all the factors of those things happening in that place. So each agent's very specifically focused. It's saying, well, I'm looking at a demographic, or I'm looking at a socioeconomic, or cultural, or political. I can get right down to modeling each individual person in a particular location. So I not only can I sort of figure out, well, what's generally happening in this area based on news or reports, I can then do a detailed analysis of each individual person and tell you how likely or not they are to vote or do something. And now keep in mind that's a double-edged sword. And the reason I bring this up is when working with this technology, with great power comes great responsibility. In the same way that I'm able to understand user patterns, user flows, user activities, and make predictions based on that, inversely, you can use that to influence people to do or take action on things. Now, in the context of a startup, that might be a venture capitalist or a potential first customer. But when doing that, you have to be cognizant that you don't want to take advantage of that position, meaning you don't want to create some kind of system that goes out and disrupts people's ways of thinking and acting on a global scale for the powers all the wrong reasons. So the reason why I created this more than anything was to just illustrate the fact that this is possible. And by knowing this is possible, we are able to understand and adapt and hopefully defend against these types of things. So my takeaway from our conversation today is this. Use this to be successful. Use this to empower yourself to be a better, more efficient, effective version of yourself, but don't use it for bad things. That's my presentation, guys. Thanks. Thanks
Just so
for
people
listening to
know,
me.
I mean, this is the literally cutting edge stuff. I think yeah, it's a real honor for you to be there. Joyce, do you have a quick question?
I do. With ChatGPT, I know there's something in the background that if you have a paid version, you can click it on that says, keep this private to me, so this information isn't shared with others. So if we're using these packages, these apps that you've mentioned, are they all paid? Are they unpaid? And if you use them and they integrate with one another, does that keep your information? Is it available for any and everybody in case we're using proprietary information or things that we don't want out in the public domain as yet?
Yeah. So I'm gonna talk plainly and frankly about intellectual property and proprietary knowledge. AI is particularly good at inferring the unseen. When you ask it something and it hallucinates, it's making a guess based on probabilities of what the answer is, even if those things aren't true or real. So anything that is out there that is visible, whether it's a resume of a group of people or a website or other information, then can now be inferred. So you can actually see and create things that you don't necessarily have direct access to. It's terrifying, I might admit, but the reality is the proprietary elements that you're worried about don't matter. And I'm not saying that to diminish what you're doing, but what you're really doing at this point is using this to amplify whatever it is that you're trying to do and do it faster, better, more effectively. Let me show you something quick here while I got you guys, how to supercharge your ChatGPT. So first of all, in terms of the question about being paying or free, if I said it would cost you $20 a month to get access to the most powerful knowledge system ever invented by humanity, that doesn't seem like a lot of money to me. It's basically I'm giving you the genie for $20 a month. So buy the paid version. You have no reason not to buy the paid version of Perplexity. I think that's around $20 as well. You're looking at $40 a month for basically limitless knowledge. Like, in my opinion, that's the best $40 you've ever spent. All right, so in your settings here, you'll notice that here's an option for personalization. This is how you make ChatGPT more extremely powerful. So first of all, you have this area of custom instructions. So custom instructions tells the system how you want it to think, right? So what would you like ChatGPT to know about you to provide a better response? Well, my primary objective is boost Reuben Cohen's consultancy experience and knowledge. And here's prioritize AI consulting, precision responses, here's how I want it to communicate, all the, here's a bit about me. I live in Oakville, Ontario. My friends call me Ruve. I got 30 years experience, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now down here is how would you like ChatGPT to respond? Now this is right clear, articulate responses. Don't make me sound stupid, right? I don't want that. Use reference. If you're going to tell me a fact, prove it, right? Cite sources, include where and how you're getting the information. In this case, segment those tasks. So think how you should think, use problem solving. Allow the model to solve its own problem using clarifying internal dialogue, right? So use tools, look up information, use a feedback mechanism, use the ability to sort of have a self-improvement as part of the process. And again, I can copy and give you guys this as well. You can really just copy and paste mine if you want. And periodic instruction, tell it to me the way I need to understand it. This is really important. We all think differently. It's not that someone's smarter or someone's stupider. That doesn't matter. This is the ultimate equalizer. What you're doing is you're getting this system to interact with you in the way that you think. So you might tell yourself, I'm not good at math. Who cares? You're good at English and speaking and articulating. Get the system to give it to you in the way that you think. Or inversely, you're good at math. Get it to give you in an algebraic sort of, structured way that relates to you. systematic change and evaluation. This is how I want the system to sort of understand. You can see that's tailored to the way that I think and the way that I operate. This is good for me, and it makes me, again, a better version of myself. Write, a comprehensive social media posts that go viral. My LinkedIn post last week had close to 400,000 views. I just use ChatGPT to create my random stuff. I talk to it, create me a post about, blah, blah, blah. Next thing I know, I got 100,000 views on the post. It works. Also, my last thing here is a little pet peeve. Don't make it sound like AI. And so the way I make it avoid sounding like AI, I say avoid AI sounding discourse markers in the realm of blah, 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 or thematic phrases. It sounds like Shakespeare. No one wants that stuff. Never use the word akin, never use the word realm, never use, obvious AI sounding terminology. That works, and this makes it really good. The last part is the memory capability. The memory capability is when you use ChatGPT, you have the ability to say, remember something, so these are things that relate. I'm going to start at the bottom. These are all things I said told to remember. So here's my social media stuff, so it knows where my stuff is. Here's some information about how I like to program. So because I do a lot of development, as you could probably tell, I wanted to understand the way that I do my development. And then I say I prefer an agentic approach, which you just got a brief crash course in. It tells it like, what does that mean? Conversational style, other various things that just lots and lots of information. So I'm always feeding the system the information that's going to empower me. And the last question you probably have is, does that work? Well, back in November of 2022, I was one of the first people to get access to ChatGPT. And literally the first thing I asked ChatGPT is, and I'm going to sound like a bonkers wacko, but I asked it, how can I be the most influential and powerful person in AI? I'm not, obviously. But what happened within 8 weeks, I created a Reddit because ChatGPT said, you should create a Reddit. I'm like, well, I don't know anything about Reddit. How do I do that? Well, follow these steps. Okay, I'm going to create a Reddit. Next thing you know, I've got 30,000 people subscribed to it, and I get like the top AI Reddit. Next thing, and it said, okay, now I've got that. I got a phone call from Ernst & Young. The guy is following me on my Reddit, really into the stuff I'm saying, is, hey, can you come in and help us with our AI project? This is 8 weeks later, and that ends up being a $1.4 billion AI project that I was a lead architect on, that they literally found me through Reddit. Now, is that because 20 years of previous experience? Probably, but it also didn't hurt to have all these other things that ChatGPT told me to do to become apparently the most influential person in AI. So together with my past and my present, it amplified and worked like almost overnight.
And we just got the secret, which is amazing. Okay, one last thing before we go on this, and we get into the next presenter is really quickly. Can we see your mid-journey process?
Oh yeah,
So,
I
so
love
for
Midjourney.
everyone that does like images and stuff like that,
Actually,
it's
you
easier
know,
to understand it.
yeah, what's actually more powerful in Midjourney for this crew, and I think I might show instead, is ideogram. So the Midjourney does really cool images, like it's the best image system, but ideogram does really good text. And so a lot of the work that you're going to be doing relates to creating, PowerPoint presentations and things where you need to do text layout. So what this system does is allows you to create these amazing sort of text. This was a post I did today. So I'm like, I'm going to rant about how OpenAI needs to be is suddenly closed. So I need a compelling image to go with it, right? So you can see here I did a whole bunch of different versions. They're all pretty good, right? Of sort of metaphor of a wall. So in this case, I can go here. I can see that it was just a simple little prompt that says a photorealistic image of late afternoon of a walled garden with a metal sign that says, et cetera, et cetera. Now, what's also kind of cool about this is similar to that site here, where we went and grabbed this little thing. I can go back. I'm going to take a screenshot of this, and I can literally take whatever and do modifications to it. So let's just take this picture for a sec, and I'm going to go here. We're in the age of beg, borrow, and I don't want to say steal. All right, so we can paste that in here, and now we can remix this. So I'm just going to click remix. Now I can remix it, so it's going to take a stab at doing various things here, and we don't have a lot of time. But if I want to, I could tell it what information I want to place in it, and then I can make it more like the original or less like the original. So let's make it less like the original and see what happens. Now that you know how to take an image and build it, we can use this to sort of visualize it before we build it. Or I can create a PowerPoint deck or whatever. So now instantaneously, I've got different styles. Okay, you know what? I want this to be, I don't know, I want this to be a little bit more colorful, let's say.
Which for everyone that needs to do mock-ups or just like of landing pages, anything, this is incredible.
Yeah, so watch this. So I want to go deep ultramarine. Let's see what happens. So, and you have different styles. If I want realistic, I want design, I want 3D, whatever, I can do that as well. I'm just going auto because whatever. All right, so I'm going to, I'm going to make this happen. I'm going to remix this. So now we asked it to be more blue, but you notice I didn't do 100% all the way to the left, which would have been sort of making it fully that thing. This is going to be a mishmash of the original input image and this. So now it's got the sort of more blue tones. Now we're going to do one more remix. And this remix, we're gonna go over here. We're just gonna move this all the way down to like 1. Let's see what that looks like. You can literally copy and build anything. Decks, UIs, visualizations, videos, audio, whatever. See, as I move that slider over, the design varies more from the original. So this was moved over a little bit more. This is a bit more. So you can see how it gets more and more sort of different because I was using that slider over here. And now if I got rid of this altogether, so now there's no input. Now all it has is description. You'll see that it'll be the most different. And then the size is even different in this one. I made it. I guess I did a portrait style. So let's just see what the portrait style looks like. Give it a sec. And this is happening 4 images in what, 10 seconds, 20 seconds. Okay, this is definitely the state of the art. So now,
oh, that's doing eye tracking. It's hypothesizing what the eye tracking will be.
It could do anything you dream up. Yeah. So
this is incredible.
Last thing I want to tell you last thing, and I don't mean to harp on venture capitalists, but venture capitalists are not technologists. They're pack animals that respond to what they see. And so when you show up and you show them something high fidelity, I mean a mock-up that doesn't just, isn't just described, but functional in a way that's like, when you click or see it on your phone, responds and acts, they're not going to know that you spent 20 minutes doing it. Their minds are going to be blown. They're going to think you spent $1 million in a team of thousands building it, and you're going to be like, yeah, But that's your secret weapon here, right? You can visualize it, you can describe it, you can build it, you can deploy it. And I haven't even gotten into the deployment parts. Everything I just showed you, I can literally deploy with one click, and I can scale that infinitely. So I could literally build something capable of Facebook style usage by just asking.
Okay, the last time you presented, it was like it was so shocking that I actually got depressed afterwards because I was like, what are we humans here for anyways? But I think this is since that, which is maybe a year ago, it's evolved significantly. And so yeah, this is it's actually more optimistic because now it's like, okay, you can see the opportunity and all the tools to be able to seize the opportunity. So yeah, thank you. We're living in the future right now. This is fantastic.
It's been amazing few months. Like this wasn't possible in May. That's how crazy it is. Like everything I'm showing you literally probably wasn't even possible in July. I don't know what, between August and right now, there was this crazy sort of Cambrian explosion of capability in these systems that just all of a sudden it went from pretty amazing to WTF.
Incredible. Okay, we're going to get into the next presentation. So Ben Stacy, he needs no introduction, but we'll do a quick one anyways. Honestly, of all the pitch builders that we've seen globally, I mean, he's probably one of the highest ranked, if not the best. He runs a company called Pitchwork, and they specialize in building up pitch decks. He used to work with Founder Institute headquarters. He also with Founder Institute in Canada. Um, but yeah, he's going to go over how to construct a pitch deck and go through the process of it. So now we know a little bit of AI things that we can use, tools there, but then also the construction of an actual deck. So without further ado, Ben, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Jordan. And I absolutely loved Tour Ruin. It was phenomenal. And we absolutely live in the future. We all have magic at our fingertips at this point. And I likewise, Jordan, I'm just super excited about like I'm not worried about humans being replaced by power tools. I'm excited that humans now have power tools. So like we can all be like 100x, 1000x more creative, and we can build all kinds of things, and all kinds of services can be improved, and all kinds of dreams that we had of things we'd want to build are now possible. And one of the biggest pain points for founders being non-technical at the outset is kind of, I wouldn't say solved, but we've put a massive dent in that. So I'm going to try and run you through this evening the other big scary thing in the room, which is often trying to articulate your ideas, trying to formalize them into some kind of a structure, understand exactly what it is that you're going to be able to communicate that in kind of a pitch format. So let me just share my screen real quick. We will get right. Okay, good. Cool. So I'm going to try and do this relatively quickly in about, say, like 20 odd minutes, maybe up to 30 max. But generally I do this as like an hour and a half, maybe 2 hour workshop that we sometimes do for the community and the ecosystem. So add me on LinkedIn and keep an eye out for those opportunities as they pop up, because we're getting a lot more active in the next couple months. But let's jump in. So my name's Ben. As Jordan mentioned, I've worked at Founder Institute for a long time, but I started my career in Iceland, where I mostly grew up. Grew up in Denmark, and then the UK, and then in Iceland. Started out my career as a graphic designer in the middle of an enormous financial crash. So every client that we could possibly imagine kind of working for just evaporated overnight. We had a class that was called The Industry, which was talking about the different agencies and the different clients and the different kind of ways that we could work with people. And they literally just canceled the course midway through. It's like, there's no point, guys. Everybody in this course is out of business. Go figure it out for yourselves. And so we were kind of pushed out of school with literally zero prospects of making any money, and you kind of had to figure it out for yourself. And so working in the music industry, we were always kind of resource strapped, and we had small groups of people with high aspirations trying to do something very creative, but no resources. And so that's really kind of stuck and is ingrained in kind of the fabric and the culture of the company. So fast forward to 2015, I'm doing work for Nike, for Coca-Cola, Xbox, Netflix, Microsoft, a bunch of kind of Fortune 500 brands at an agency level, where I'm on a team of 60 designers, 200 support staff, based here in Toronto, doing work for companies all around the world, but with this enormous infrastructure around it. And our main task there was to create decks. At the same time, since 2014, 15, roughly, I was helping run the Toronto chapter of Founder Institute. And from 2014 until kind of later, I ran 24 consecutive cohorts of FI in Toronto. So very, very well versed in kind of what it is that you're going through at the moment, and kind of what the issues are with early stage founders. But in 2017, particularly, I was kind of standing with one foot in startup world, one foot in kind of corporate and agency world, and seeing that, look, these two groups are basically dealing with the same thing. Whenever there is a large amount of money on the table or a big deal going down, somebody's opening PowerPoint and they're probably not very good at it. And so on the corporate side, we have this army of designers and support staff to go deal with that. Account managers, strategy people, writers, the whole shebang, right? On the startup side, it was basically just, you go figure it out. Just founders, like, here's a couple of YouTube videos, here's a top, here's a framework, and here's a top 10 list of how to fix this. You go do it. And so I figured, look, there's a huge opportunity here. There's lots that I can do. I can bring lots of value to my contemporaries and friends that are trying to build companies. And I had an in, obviously, with Founder Institute. And so I shifted all of my operations over into working with startups and working with founders. And so continued to do that for a couple of years. Then went to work at FI HQ in California, from Toronto, but I was on the operations team that was based in California. And there I was basically managing a portfolio of about 25 to 30 programs all over the world, from North America, Central and Northern Europe, Arabian Peninsula, South Asia, Australasia. Australia, New Zealand, Malaysia. And what I got to see there on a day-to-day basis was that a lot of the universal problems well, there are a lot of universal problems in terms of articulating the companies and how these ecosystems function and what the attitudes of investors are and what the kind of things are that they're keeping an eye on and looking for in a presentation or in a deck or in a company, broadly speaking. And after kind of a 2-year stint at FIHQ, I went back to running PitchBook full time, and have since helped raise about $75 million dollars through kind of working on decks and working on presentations for founders at mainly a seed and a Series A level. But in the past kind of 6 months, we're on track to double that number, and in the next 6 months, we'll probably double or triple it. We have one client at the moment that's raising 85 million, and they are dealing with very similar problems that idea stage companies deal with as well. The numbers are bigger and the companies are more complex, but at a fundamental level, they're dealing with the same types of issues, and those are the issues that I'm going to try and run you through today. So last point here is how exactly we engage with the ecosystem. We make sure that anybody is able to engage with us regardless of how much resources you have or time you have. So our absolute the first foot in the door is our community pitch reviews that we do on a semi-weekly basis. They're free. It's 15 minutes. You drop in very FI style type feedback. You pitch for 3 to 5 minutes. We do 10 minutes of feedback. And then you can stick around to watch other founders pitch, or you can jump right back into building or getting back to work or talking to clients or taking care of the kids, whatever you need to do. So it's an easy, quick in and out to get some feedback. Pitch Clinic is a by-the-hour production service where we sit down and actually help founders with writing, design, and strategy of their decks. And then at an organizational level, we do courses and workshops and accelerator support for larger organizations. But what we're going to be covering today are these 4 kind of core pillars of what makes a pitch deck and a presentation really strong. Because it's not just design, right? It's not just having pretty slides, and it's not just having, having kind of a technical show force. It's a range of things, and so we tend to take kind of a holistic approach to how exactly you make a presentation land and do well. And I'll be sharing these slides after the chat, after our chat today. So so Jordan can get those out to you probably tomorrow. But let's start with structure. So there are a couple of reasons why we want to maintain structure in our presentations. The first one is clarity. So standard structures will ensure that there is a coherent flow of information, that you're not trying to make points about the problem in 3 or 4 different places, that you're not introducing features and solutions in 3 or 4 different places, that you smush all of those things into one point and you put them in kind of a linear format so that it's clear and easy to understand what exactly is going on with the technology, with the presentation, and with the solution that you're coming up with. So, for instance, this structure is very typical, right? You got a cover and an overview, which is so this structure is cover, overview, problem, solution, traction, market, competition, advantage, roadmap, team, ask, thank you, appendix, right? This is a very typical startup deck structure. What this story is really telling, we hear a lot about startup storytelling, right? What it's really saying is, here's who we are. There is this problem that we spotted out in the world, and here's what we're doing about it. So far, a bunch of people have paid us to do something about it, and there's a larger bucket of people that is willing to pay for us to solve their problem. There are other people going after that same bucket that we're competing with, but we have certain advantages over them. And we have a plan or roadmap to continue to exploit our advantages over our competition. We have a team that has done this before and is fired up to take us to the next level. We need to ask you for some resources so that we can start moving faster. Thank you very much for your time. Appendix if you have any questions, right? That's basic structure is applicable to almost every company at almost any level of complexity, regardless of whether it's a super simple idea or whether it is a deep tech, heavy, hardcore material sciences type company. All companies will adhere to a similar structure. We have all kinds of other literary kind of story structures come into play, like the hero's journey and stuff like this. Those are literary tropes, right? We don't necessarily apply we're not applying the structure that worked for Star Wars to a business presentation. It works for fictional. The reason that the hero's journey works so well is that it maps to most people's lives, right? The reason that this structure works so well for startups is that it is a baseline of how you understand complex organizations. What are they dealing with? What have they come up with? How far along are they? Is it a viable organization or just a good idea? Are they going after a market where there's enough money that they can sustain themselves and grow? Do they have competitors to show that they are not the only ones trying to do this, that there are other people in the ecosystem or in the industry, and that there are other, and that they have an awareness of who's around them? Are they doing something special so that they're ideally the apex player, or at least in the top percentile of players in that space? What kind of people are on that team, and do they have the kind of credentials and background to carry this through? And what do they need from us? And does that sound like a fair deal? Right? This is the same kind of risk assessment rubric that will be applied to every company at every level. This is applicable to idea stage startups, and it's applicable to Series A, Series B, and beyond stage startups as well. So first off, clarity, right? We want to build that comprehension. We want to help people understand from the very first bit in simple terms what it is you're doing, and then build on that. The reason we need that kind of clarity is that the analysts and the audience and the investors and the angels and the mentors and the partners that are receiving this information or the decks, they need efficiency, because even though you are spending maybe hours or dozens of hours or weeks or days on creating this pitch and kind of fine-tuning it and honing it, and you're spending every waking hour trying to build your business, they've only known of the existence of your business for maybe 10 seconds, at best maybe a day, and they don't have the same amount of context as you do, and they have another 20, 30, 40, 50 decks to review that day. So efficiency is really key, because if it takes somebody hours to get through your deck, they're not spending that time. The reason for the 3 to 5 minute limits on your pitches is not necessarily just for practical purposes. It's because that's just how much attention you have of somebody's. If it takes them more than 3 to 5 minutes to comprehend what you're doing and get that strategic overview, they're going to check out, right? And so you need efficiency. The reason that you need that level of efficiency and want to make sure that everybody gets through the full spectrum of your strategic overview, which is these kind of 10 to 12 topics, right? This is not necessarily 10 to 12 slides. This is 10 to 12 topics. You can cover 2 topics on one slide. You can take 3 slides to talk about one topic. I think, and this is my kind of, this is my hot take on slide counts. I don't think slide counts matter at all. There are all kinds of limitations that are put on you. It's like, oh, you can only have 10 slides, you can only have 15 slides, only 20 slides. I don't think that matters at all. I think what matters is how much content are you trying to get through in 3 to 5 minutes. If you can get through 50 slides in 3 minutes, knock yourself out, go for it. If you've got 5 really good slides and you take 3 to 5 minutes to go through those, but the message still gets across, great, who cares? If people understand and they retain the information, then it doesn't really matter. It's more about how much content and how much information are you trying to get across versus how many slides necessarily they are on the deck. So the reason I bring it up is frequently one of the questions I get is, my company's so complex, what section do I drop out so that I can hit my time limit, right? It's not a matter of dropping sections, because then you've taken a piece of the puzzle out. The way to do it is that you lower the level of detail, right? Instead of trying to be comprehensive or provide an education or bring up all of the points that you can think of, reduce the level of detail in each section instead of trying to drop sections completely and maybe spend like a minute and a half on problem and then sprint through the other bits and then drop market or drop roadmap completely, right? Just lower the level of detail for each one. This structure these are breadcrumbs. It's not supposed to be an education. It's an overview of what you're doing, so that I, as your counterpart, or whoever's on the other side of the table, can make a quick risk assessment as to, do I put more time or money or effort or attention or connections into this founder versus the next one in my inbox? Because there is always a next one waiting to pitch just after you're done, right? And that brings us to the last point here, is comparison. If you start playing around with super creative structures and these really esoteric kind of off the beaten track ways of pitching, it becomes difficult for you to be compared to other companies. And because often what will happen, especially if you send in decks to say like angel funds that have a lot of traffic, your deck isn't actually even going to land on a partner's table or a VC's table or an angel's table to be reviewed. It is going to be reviewed by an analyst or junior analyst or an intern. They're going to create a one pager based on what it says in your deck, and that will make it to their desk. So if you make it easy for that middle party to process your deck and make a good summary of it, whoever that might be, the higher the likelihood that it's going to come up in conversation and they can navigate it. Point is, you need to have a structure. It doesn't have to be precisely this structure, but it has to be structured. Because what's happening here is that we're talking about three types of information. You're providing me some context, what's going on around the company. You're talking about the product, what have you come up with, and what is it that you're building. Reuven showed some amazing examples of how I was giggling most of the time through that presentation. I absolutely love these dev tools. They're so cool. We can build we can build apps so much quicker now. It's just phenomenal. But at the end of the day, just that solution or that piece of software is not the only thing that is important for the company, right? If you just go in there, generate that, throw it in a deck, and then ask for money, not going to go particularly far, because the real secret sauce is execution. What is your demonstrated ability to execute? Do you get out of the lab and out of your brain and out of theorizing and researching and sketching and drafting? Do you get out of that phase and out into the wild where you're actually trying it out with users? You're testing, you're discovering things that emergent behaviors from your customers that you never thought they would engage in, ways that they use your product, problems that they have that you weren't even aware of. That's where the real gold is. So build quickly, but also deploy quickly. Each time that you do that, the higher quality the deck is going to get, and showing that you have traction, showing that you have a roadmap and a plan, and there are things that you've done already, showing that you have a rational plan for what kind of resources you need to achieve a certain milestone. That's your ask, right? The more you are out in the wild testing and learning from users and building, the more accurate that execution bucket of information is going to become. And execution is one of the best leading indicators of a successful startup. So it's also going to be very top of mind for an investor to feed their risk assessment. Anybody can generate software at this point, so execution is kind of the next step. Who does the work? Who gets out of their head and does the thing and gets out and talks to customers? If you have a bit more of a complex company, you may find that you want to edit the structure a little bit. The one difference to point out here is that we go from problem in the beginning. Here's a problem out in the world that we've seen, then credentials, then solution, then use case. So here's a problem we've seen out in the world. We have seen this problem firsthand over the past 10 years, having worked at Siemens or worked at, wherever. We've seen this problem firsthand. That's why we built X solution. And here are some deployments of that solution, some use cases, because often, especially if it's material science or if it's algorithmic or it's something kind of deep tech, it can be difficult to understand where exactly the product is being used or where it comes into play. So give me a real world example of like person A is using it in this scenario and it helps their day by doing X, Y, and Z. Person B is using it in this scenario, it helps their day, but it helps them in their day by doing X, Y, and Z. So help me understand kind of a universal concept, because that kind of brings us to content and what that story actually is. You never really know who's in the audience. And so creating one master deck that is just kind of one deck to rule them all, that just has one single message that is applicable to everyone, is kind of a failing strategy, because you are interacting with so many different parties as investors and funders, as advisors, mentors, accelerator admins, friends and family, other founders, collaborators and competition, strategic partners, clients and users. Like there's so many different archetypes and personas of people that you're talking to that if you make one razor sharp singular pitch, it's very difficult. It's very difficult to, well, it's not difficult, but it's just not applicable to every type of person that you're going to be talking to about your company. As the leader of your organization, you are the chief communicator. You have to rally everybody around the cause and keep everybody on topic and focused, whether those are clients, staff members, investors, stakeholders, whoever it is, even I mean, friends and family are there for a reason, right? It's you. There's all kinds of parties that you need to kind of communicate with and manage to keep the engine to keep the kind of train going in the right direction, right? So how do we talk about our companies in these kind of high level complexities? We can talk about universal concepts that everybody understands, regardless of what kind of how educated they are on your particular industry, or we have insider knowledge or the mechanic. So the utility is, what does it do? Who is it for? What kind of an outcome does it provide an end user? I do PowerPoint for startups. It helps founders raise more money. That's the utility. The mechanic is, we are developing a business intelligence platform under the hood that helps us spot founders much earlier so that we can sell that information up to investors and feed deals later on. That's a much more complex version of what we're doing, and that will follow on from a simple version. But it doesn't really matter like what AI tools and what automation, of which we AI tools are super, super, super useful, and you absolutely should use as many of them as you can. We keep an eye on all of them. A lot of what Reuven was talking about as well is super interesting. But it doesn't really matter how we achieve that, because we help founders by we do PowerPoint for startups, and we help them raise more money than they otherwise would have, or we help them communicate better. You don't need to know how we do that to understand that that's a valuable company. But if I lead with we have an analysis platform that uses AI and blockchain to do X, Y, it's like, okay, I don't understand what you're doing yet, right? So if you lead with a universal concept or a utility, it's a lot easier for me to understand the organization and the product, and then we can learn about what's under the hood later on, because I have what we call like a conceptual anchor. When I get lost in the source and all the technical detail, I can always come back to, we do PowerPoint for startups. So a very simple core message, right? So a quick note on scripts. There are good things about scripts and there's bad things about scripts. The good things are, it's a great way to review the level of detail that you're getting into. If you just kind of barf out all the detail, all the information you can think of about your company, and it's a great use case for AI as well, for instance. Just create an enormous text document where you just free word, just free associate everything that you want to do with your company, all the things that you're like, all the strategies you're going with, the product you're building, the customers that you're talking to, where you want to take it, what the state of the industry is. Just throw all that at a document, and then you can feed it to an AI. I'm preferable to Perplexity and Claude, and I use Gemini for some things, and I use ChatGPT for other things. All of them can handle a rundown of a deck. It doesn't really matter which one you use, paid or free. You basically just vomit out a huge amount of text, and then you ask it to give you bullet points in a standard pitch deck structure. And what it will do is then reduce it down to bullet points that you can then speak to. You don't, because if you just describe your company and ask it to write a pitch for you, you're going to get generic content. Reuven's the kind of foundational prompt that is in the settings in GPT and telling it not to sound like AI. That's a really crucial point, because I can tell whether something was generated with Gemini or whether it's generated with Claude or with ChatGPT just based on the tone of the language in writing. AIs are really great at giving you an answer shaped object that's not necessarily always a correct answer, and that shape of the wording is very recognizable to people that deal with it all the time. It's verbose in the same ways, it ends sentences in the same ways, it has a semantic structure that is very recognizable, right? So feed it seed content of your own, ask it to break it down into bullet points that you then use as a cheat sheet, but not a verbatim script. Because the bad things about script is that they're very difficult to present live. They can often sound really robotic and monotone, and it's very hard for an audience to keep track of like a bang, 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 kind of super high speed, high technical run through of a pitch. Now, I recognize that I talk very fast, but I know this is being recorded and we've got not as much time as I would like. But I try and do so in a human conversational kind of language. If I'm at a bar, drinks or not, but excited talking about something, this is what I sound like. It's no different than just a normal conversation, right? I'm not putting on I'm so excited to tell you about this amazing solution that we have developed. Like, I'm not putting on like salesy radio voice, right? It's just me. I want to get to know you as a founder. What are you building? Because you're the person that's steering the ship. and I'm hiring captains, right? So I want to know who's steering the ship and what are you like? I don't want to hear from your salesperson, and I don't want to hear from ChatGPT, and I don't want to hear your radio salesy voice, right? Just tell me about your company, right? Okay, design. So first thing, beware the design trap. 20 years in design, as 20 years as a designer is kind of my primary skill set. Do not spend that much time on design. Maybe 10% of the time you spend on developing a deck should go into design. This may sound a little bit counterintuitive, but there's good reason for it. The message needs to exist above everything else in the deck. All the decorations, all the multimedia, all the mock-ups, all the fancy bells and whistles. I need to get the message first and foremost, because no amount of content is going to fix bad, no amount of design is going to fix bad content. If you have an overloaded, technical, jargon-filled message that I can't understand, no amount of animations or star swipes or mock-ups or infographics is going to help that. The types of decks that we create are legible, easy to edit, and low tech. They're not particularly complex, and I'll show you some examples in a second. You can go out and get a template. You can go and get some people on Fiverr. You can hire us. You can hire whoever you want, TopTal. There's lots of people that can help you with design. There's a lot fewer people that can help you with the messaging and the structure of the presentation. So make sure that you get that nailed first and then apply a new coat of paint, because it's much easier to make edits to a wireframe of a deck than having to roll back maybe $1,000 worth of production services to try and, and get locked into sunken costs. Because like, oh, we spent so much money on this like infographic video or this marketing video, we're going to use that in the deck, and suddenly that's taking up like a minute and a half of the deck, and it's not really telling you about the product. It's just flashy. Like, message over aesthetics 10 times out of 10. If I see a pitch that's written on like Sharpie on poster board versus something that's like a multimedia experience, but the first one is about a good company, I'll take the good company. I don't care how it's presented, right? As long as the message is clear. Super simple rule of thumb and how you manage that production process. Start with a script so you can figure out the structure. And that does not have to be a word for word exact script that you read out loud. We'll talk a little bit about how you practice and get out of that mode in a second, but for all intents and purposes, have a source document that is mostly text. That's the easiest thing to edit. Second step, create a wireframe. That wireframe is something you can start pitching and clicking through in PowerPoint or Canva or Google Slides, whatever you want. And you can take it to advisors, you can take it to mentors, you can take it to other people that might be able to help you with it. But then you want to tidy up the deck. Throw in a couple of images, throw in a couple mock-ups. Some of the UI mock-ups that Ruben was showing, those are really great ways to visualize the product, because we don't necessarily need a full spectrum built app. I only need one or two screens to understand what's going on. If you are going to spend time on aesthetics, spend them on mock-ups. Very topical for today. Help me visualize what the product is. I want to see what's going on with the product. Help me understand what it is, so that when you talk about all the technical stuff and the marketing stuff and all of these different things, I want to be able to pin all of that on some visual, right? I want to be able to see, okay, you're talking about a mobile app, or you're talking about a desktop dashboard, or it's a robotic tractor, or it is a it's a line of cosmetics, or it is a food, or it is a material science product that's being used in paint for ships or whatever. Help me understand where out in the real world this thing exists and who is interacting with it, or in what kind of a scenario it's being used. Here's a really quick example. Former client of ours, well, not former, but they are a client of ours, but one that we did a couple of months ago. A mesh network for search and rescue guys that are out in the wild trying to build or taking part in search and rescue operations where the cell networks and whatnot have gone down. They'll have mobile devices that connect to what is essentially a router. That router extends the range of multiple kilometers to another router that they can then communicate over, right? This is the original slide. Once I talk you through it, you kind of get what it is, but it's very difficult to just kind of take that on midstream or just at a glance. So this is what we built instead. It fits the person in a command center using the device kind of on their desk, device strapped to a backpack, somebody using it on a phone out on a mountaintop, search and rescue crew out around a Jeep where there's, it's in an austere environment. We're getting a lot of these kind of visual cues across in a very snappy kind of knee-jerk type way. And so these are actually all generated in Midjourney as well. So they're not actual photos of rescue crews. They're AI generated images of how the thing functions. And so as a quick kind of display of like what exactly is going on with the like how does the product exist out in the real world, that's all you need to show me. You don't need to show the full kind of breadth of all the technical components and all of the screens of the UI or a full kind of user walkthrough. Just give me an idea of what does this look like out in the real world. And that level of polish is what we basically build for all of our decks, whether it's a sports app or whether it's there's an alternative like Impossible Meats, but for salmon, whether it's a sales enablement platform or a blockchain sports ticketing app, like all of these different things, we get them to this level of polish. And just as a side note, all of these companies have raised at least $2 to $10 million, and one of them's raised their 20 million. So this is kind of the level of polish at that scale. And it's very easily achievable in PowerPoint, in Canva, in Google Slides. You don't need any special tools or any fancy capabilities to do it, other than just good design principles, minimalist, easily legible, straightforward layouts, right? Now, last point on delivery. Things will go wrong when you try and pitch. There's all kinds of things that are going to happen, whether you're in person or whether you're on Zoom. You're going to have somebody's going to come off mute and they're going to be in traffic and it's going to be noisy and it's going to interrupt you. If you're in person, kids are going to run in the room, cat runs across the keyboard, something happens, your camera goes off. There's always something that happens. So firstly, we want to just control what we can control. Just being audible, speaking loud and clear, and then coming across confident. And confidence is one of those kind of tricky, kind of ephemeral things that is a bit difficult to kind of put your finger on what it is exactly. But there's a very mechanical way that you can build confidence in pitching, and I'm going to show you right now. So the way that most people, and it starts with practicing your pitch. And there's lots and lots and lots of rhetoric that goes around about how to pitch or how to practice and these kind of things. But we need to just kind of take a step back and look at what does that practicing process really look like. This is our structure from before, right? 10 to 12 slide structure. We start from the very beginning, and then we start going across, and then we stop. We forget a word, scratchy nose, something happens. We've got to shit, got to go back to the beginning. So they stop the run, go another run through, maybe forget what to say, think, oh, I could have said this a little bit better. I should say something different, back to the beginning. Maybe one time they make it all the way through, right through to the very end. This now becomes this kind of unattainable benchmark that you have to hit every time because I did it perfect that one time, so I must be able to do it perfect all the other times again in future, right? Then you try again, make it maybe only just into like 1 or 2 slides before you make a mistake. Now you're starting to get nervous and like, screw it. I know my company. I can talk about it for days. I don't, I've got other shit to do. This is stressful. Fuck it. I'm just going to wing it during the presentation, right? Not necessarily a great idea, right? What we do want to do instead here is when we are practicing, we want to start from the very beginning. We want to go through right through all the way to the very end, and then start again, do a practice run, go right through all the way to the very end. These moments will still happen, right? You're still going to have these kind of fatal moments of forgetting a word or having to scratch your nose or having to cough or misspeaking something. Instead of stopping and going back to the beginning to try and polish this absolute perfect run through, and spoiler alert, you're never going to be able to do it perfect on a consistent basis. Nobody really does. Instead of trying to achieve this kind of impossible perfection state, what you do is you push through it. You take a quick second to just think about what you want to say, push through it, get back on track, push through it, say things slightly differently, rephrase what you're going to say, and just push through. Your first run through is going to take you 15 minutes of a 3-minute pitch. Don't worry, that's a cold start. You go again, that is going to drop down to 7 or 8 minutes. You go again, it's going to drop down to 5, because what's happening here is each of these fatal moments, so to speak, each of these moments, you're training yourself to be more adaptable and more, you're training an improvisational muscle. If you if instead of going through with like a razor sharp script every single time, if you say something different every time, if you say it in a different way every time you go through this practice process, that's better than nailing it in the precise wording every time. Because what's happening there is that instead of you having this like razor sharp kind of tightrope that you have to sprint along, you have this wide boulevard that you can kind of meander down when you're tired, when you're forgetful, when you've got other things that are stressing you out, when there are people in the room that you might want to emphasize a certain point or emphasize another point. You can kind of, you can kind of swerve around in terms of how you say something. And the other reason this is so important is that if you try and hyper practice one way of saying things, that's only going to be applicable in one scenario, in this one hyper optimized scenario. What about when you're having an elevator conversation? What about when you are running into people at an event and chatting about your company? What about during Q&A? What about when there's a different composition of people in the room? Maybe there's a finance person, a doctor, and a science, somebody who deals with legal issues around regulation in health tech. What if they're in the room versus somebody who is more marketing focused, or somebody that is just part of the general public, or is possibly a potential sales target, or a client, or a partner? These are all different archetypes of people that you're going to run into. So the more adaptable you are, the easier it is for you to deal with all of those different situations. And to Ruben's point from before as well, this is what humans are good at, right? AI, not so great at this bit. This is where your human adaptability, innovation, and kind of improvisation is really, really crucial. As you're practicing, as I mentioned, your first run through is going to be cold. Second, you're going to be a little bit more warmed up. 3 is going to be smooth, but maybe slow. Your fourth or fifth run through of a pitch, of a practice, you're going to be able to kind of increase the pace a little bit. And by the fifth time, you're reaching kind of peak performance. And if you hit your sixth run through, that's when you're going to start getting tired. And then you're going to get into diminishing returns. And then if you go further, you're just going to damage your willingness to come back and practice another time. So no more than 5 run-throughs, because your voice is going to get tired, your brain is going to go to mush, you're going to get bored and annoyed with the pitch. Communicating is one of the biggest. Communicating within your organization and around your organization is one of your most important roles as a leader. So don't short circuit your ability to improve that. Don't try and run a marathon on day one. Make sure that you show up every day. And you don't have to practice every day. Like once a week is fine. Once every 2 weeks, just make sure that you are constantly honing your ability to pitch and present on some regular basis, either by pitching or by practicing. But don't do too many run-throughs in one go, because it will get exhausting and it will just become a nuisance and you won't want to do it, right? Last point, if you get a challenge or a question, pause to allow whoever asked the question to just fully complete their question, and also buy yourself a nanosecond or two to just come up with a response. Respond in short. If you feel like you need to go into deeper technical detail, ask. So, well, this is what we're doing about it. We're doing X, Y, and Z. Does that answer your question? If they say yes, thank you very much, great, you can move on to the next question. If not, they'll go, good, but I'd love to hear a little bit more about this, or I'd like to hear a little bit more about this. And that way, instead of you rambling through maybe another minute or two of just a brute force kind of info dump, you hone in and you retarget, and you hone in and you retarget to get a more focused answer each time that you ask. And does that answer your question? We can follow up offline, whatever the case may be. Because at the end of the day, the ultimate goal of any pitch is to secure the next interaction. It's not about just delivering one like knockout punch, masterful pitch, and then everybody just starts throwing cash at you. I wish that was the case. But it just doesn't work like that. It's a series of interactions that starts with a pitch or a conversation or response to a question, and then turns into a coffee and a chat and a call and a meeting and an invite to, come see the rest of the partners, and then due diligence, and then term sheets, and then negotiating, closing the deal, and getting all the other investors on board, and then closing the deal, getting the funds wired, and then after the funds are wired and they've landed, it's deploying them and doing investor updates and keeping, so it's an infinite process. You're constantly pitching in one way, shape, or form. So with that, thank you very much, everyone, for your time. You are always going to be pitching, so do please put some effort into kind of honing the skill sets. There are plenty of people out there in the ecosystem to help you. We are just one of them. And so if you want to jump in on some community pitch review type stuff, we're going to open up some sessions in the next couple of weeks for that. So I'll keep Jordan posted on the sign up links for those. But other than that, please do find me on LinkedIn. I'm very easy to get a hold of there. Yes, thank you very much for your time, everyone.
Woo! Awesome. Thank you very much. Is there any questions for Ben while we have him here? Joyce, go ahead.
Yeah, Joyce, go ahead.
About how many people are on the community that you have, like in any given time that you go into one of the sessions, about how many people would you expect to be in there?
It's often just one. It's often just one at a time. So the way that we do the sessions is that so it is open. So you can expect there to be other people that kind of sit around. It's basically the way that we do it is that we have maybe like an hour or two or three, and we basically just put it in there in dead time between our production schedules. So the real reason inside baseball is that I often get asked to review pitches all the time and I get bombarded with PDFs to review. I just don't have time to go through them, but I would love to. So instead of doing that, we put together these multi-hour sessions where we just have a 15-minute drop-in. If you go to pitchwork.com/community pitch practice and I'll community pitch review or just pitchwork.com, there is a sign-up calendar there for our events. There might be one for this evening. Disregard that because I had to cancel it because I was with you guys. You book in 15-hour specific slots. So you just show up for that one slot. You drop in. The minute you're in there, it's your time exclusively. You get to pitch. The minute you drop in, we give you feedback. And as soon as we're done, you can go back to building. You don't have to sit around on a 2-hour Zoom call with a bunch of people. You just drop in, you build, you drop in, you pitch, then you go back to building, take care of the kids, go to sleep, talk to a customer, whatever else you need to do. Because, more than most, we understand what kind of the day-to-day lives of founders are like. And so we don't want to take up multiple hours of your time just to get a little bit of feedback.
Okay,
Awesome.
thank you. I
Excellent.
may have misunderstood. I thought there was one as well where you could hear other people's pitches and take a
You
listen.
can, yeah, you can stick around. We make that clear as well that you can stick around and just listen to whoever comes up next, and learn from them. And there are often universal lessons that you do learn from those as well. But yeah, by all means, please do come in. We are developing a bit of an accelerator agnostic community of founders that are pitching and working on the pitches as well. So by all means, keep an eye out, and we'd love to have you.
So Ray's an additional mentor who's helping out. So if you want to maybe just give a quick background, Ray.
Sure. Well, good evening, everyone. It's great to see a lot of the familiar faces in this group. Many of them know I used to work for BDC. I was the director of micro, small, medium enterprises. Before that, though, I've owned a number of businesses, mostly in hospitality and marine. So we did everything from rent boats to run a bar to build and repair boats over the years. These days, I run my own charter business and I do some consulting on the side with BDC.
This part. So big round of applause for all the mentors. Thank you. We just came out of some pitches for those that are tuning in that missed the session today. Maybe before everyone leaves, and specifically the mentors, we'll just go around, and if there's any parting advice that you guys have, some of these mentors may be coming back in for the mentor idea review next Thursday, or the investor progress review the following Thursday, or tuning into the pitch forum graduation, but then also like hosting office hours. But maybe before they go, Ray, is there any parting advice or things you need help with? So this camera, go ahead. Parting advice or potentially anything you need help with.
Yeah, well, the whole bit of how to log in and all that stuff, we're gonna have to talk about later. I was more focused on figuring out what the whole thing's about. As you know, I just came on yesterday, so I'm just getting caught up. But I thought the other mentors for sure gave some fantastic presentations, and look forward to learning more about everybody, particularly the ones I don't know. So I'm here and available.
And Ruben?
I enjoy this. This is the second one I think I've given this week. So for those who are, I'm technical. So if those who are into tech, deep tech, or just tech in general, I host a Friday AI hacker space. It's an online sort of kind of like this. We all chat about the world of AI, and it's a nice community. I've got a channel. You're more than welcome to join. I warn you, it's pretty geeky stuff, but if you're into that sort of thing, you're welcome. And it might give you a 1 degree separated from some pretty interesting AI people.
Awesome. So yeah, maybe before we go, if you don't mind putting the link in the chat, and then Ben, from your side.
Yeah, so good job everyone on the pitches this evening. I would love to hear from more of you and give some more feedback. I have to run at the moment. I'm midstream moving, so I've got to go meet a truck about some cargo. So I posted the link to pitcher.com/community pitch review. We'll open up essentially like pitch hours there on a regular basis. Usually there's something every week. But Jordan, if there's any, if needed, we can open up specific ones just for the cohort to make sure that everyone gets a little bit of time in, because I really strongly believe that like at least like 5 or 10 minutes of feedback can make a big difference. And all of you know the content you need to talk about. You know your companies very well. It's really just a matter of figuring out how exactly do we talk about it and how do we get that information out in the right way. There's no particularly like special talent behind presenting. It's largely mechanical, and there are plenty of people out there in the world who are willing to help you. I'm one of them. So just grab me on LinkedIn, come to one of our sessions, reach out to your mentors, and yeah, looking forward to seeing you all in the future.
Thank you.